All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm just gearing up here. I'm Victoria Grinman. I'm here with Renia Tsigaras, and we are live again for our talk number 3 of the 5 top things that we wish every parent knew. And today's topic is actually consistency. And I just want to introduce the amazing Renia. Renia is a nurse and lactation specialist, and so she's going to be really talking a lot about the early parenthood journey, right, and breastfeeding. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about the mindset. Renia, how are you?
Hi, Victoria. It's always nice to connect with you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm doing well. I'm transitioning. What's not consistent is the weather, right?
Right. I know. I'm watching it melt, and I'm waiting for the summer, with bated breath. So, but yeah, it's always nice to do this with you because we always have such golden nuggets. And I was actually really excited about today's conversation about consistency.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know about you, but I love it. I love consistency.
As do I. And I think out of all the fundamentals, breastfeeding and lactation, consistency is probably the most potent things that will determine the success, not just of your breastfeeding goal, like the goal, but the ease at which you reach that goal.
I love it. So it's not like you're not going to reach that goal, but it's your journey can actually be dependent, the ease of it can be dependent upon how consistent you are with certain things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree the same thing regarding parenting, just parenting in general, but we can definitely get into that. So what does consistency mean to you? Like when you're meeting with a new mom, right? A new couple, a new family, and you're chatting with them about all of these things that they have to do, and it's probably very whelming. How often are you talking about consistency as a very, very important ingredient in their process?
Every single time.
Yeah.
Every single client I see, whether it's a pregnant family, and I'm giving education, or it's a postpartum family, who I'm supporting through actual breast and breastfeeding, or someone who's going to work and looking to continue to maintain their milk supply. It's always because at the foundation of lactation is that consistency. So very briefly, without turning this into like big biology lesson,
okay.
A couple of just basic fundamentals when it comes to lactation. Okay? There's a part of your brain, pituitary gland, and this gland needs stimulation consistently in order to produce more milk. How does it get the stimulation? From the breast. Whether that's a baby, that's a breast pump, that is your hands, something consistently stimulating the breast and the nipple sends the message up to the pituitary gland in the brain and says, go, make milk.
Mm-hmm.
So the more consistently you stimulate the breast, the body delivers.
I can't help but think about neuroplasticity. It's like, it's the same thing, right? It's just the better you want to get at something, or the more you want your body to, it's stimulus response. And so if we want that muscle to be strengthened, we have to consistently do whatever it is that you got to do in order to do that. So it's very intuitive to me.
Yes. And that's actually a very interesting word when it comes to breastfeeding, because many will say, this is natural. Why am I having so much difficulty with it? And I will tell you this. I use this analogy, and it's for a lot of people, right? Walking is natural. Takes practice. Over and over again. To actually walk holding on to anything without food or parent or
right?
Same thing with breastfeeding.
I love it. Yeah, it's like what I've been saying for a while. Common sense is not always common practice. So we might know, right? By the way, your sound is a little off. It goes in and out. Is there something on the speaker?
Okay. How does that sound?
Oh my gosh, so much better.
Okay, great.
We thank you. Great. Yeah. But yeah, because one of the things that I end up doing a lot, and I don't know if this happens for you, is just repeating the same thing over and over. And a lot of people say, but I heard that before. And I will say, well, have you been doing it? And the answer is normally, well, kind of, sort of. It's kind of like when I go to the gym and I'm like, oh, but like Noom thing didn't work for me. That app didn't work for me. Weight Watchers didn't work for me. Well, how consistently have you been doing the program? And then we always find out that it's not that consistent, right? And so we have this magical thinking, I think, this wish that if we just do it once or twice, it should be enough. But that's just not how our body and brain works.
Yeah, not from a lactation.
Right. I don't know from any standpoint, really.
Yeah, and so that being said, Victoria, how does that consistency to mindset and parents? Can you offer parents as far as that consistency to implement in their
Yeah. It's huge, right? Because when we're talking about development and we're talking about wanting children to develop a sense of self and a sense of trust in their outside environment, the parents, the caregivers, right? There's all different kinds of caregivers out there for kids, are that environment, especially in the beginning. And so when we're talking about consistency, we're talking about being really predictable. And kids need that predictability because they need to know what they can expect from you. And what a lot of parents fall into is going into parenting without really having a conversation about with their partner, right? Like, how are we going to do this? And so what ends up happening is there are 2 different ways that things get done, 3 different ways that things get done. And the child doesn't know what to expect. Or there's just, you don't know to have the conversation around, like, how are we going to deal with this behavior? How are we going to deal with this kind of unexpected behavior in the home, right? So the first and foremost, it's important to have that conversation. But, when we are consistent, let's just say, like, when we are consistent with kids, it would look like if there's a certain behavior that a child has, we respond the same way every time. So what it looks like when that doesn't happen is, let's say a child is jumping on the bed. And one day they are yelled at for it. And then the next day, it's okay because you're tired and you don't want to deal with it. So, like, the hell with it. Let me just go on with your bad self. The child ends up confused about what is okay and what's not okay in the home. And for the child, like, a parent might say, but my kid loves that. Like, I just let them do whatever. But when we're talking about it from a developmental perspective, it's very distinct from how a child looks like they're enjoying it. They might be enjoying it, but behind that closed door is the sense of, I can't trust what my mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, or whoever says. Like, I don't really know what they mean when they say you can't do that. And what ends up happening is you either have a really submissive kid, or you have a kid that is angry and frustrated later on. And that's where we see a lot of anxiety in children, when they can't predict what they can expect from people or their environment. So consistency, like you said it in the beginning, is one of the most important fundamental things to get and understand about raising a kid.
So what I'm hearing, have a conversation with and your caregivers.
Yeah.
So that we can all respond same fashion. Sprinkle and communicate, right? In our communication styles. So example. Child is jumping on the bed. We are all going to respond with the same phraseology. Is that a tactical way to approach that?
Sure, it could be the same phraseology. It could be, most importantly, the same outcome or what's expected of them, right? The same sort of, I don't like the word punishment so much, but natural consequence. And listen, I also know, and you're a mom, so you're probably like, wait a minute, like I definitely screwed up there once or twice, because we can't be consistent 100% of the time. We're human. And so different things call for different, sometimes we just need to get the hell out of the door. So like, whatever has us do that. But for the most part, if we can try to be consistent in how we respond, I think that creates a really nice model for kids to take on when it comes to trust. Yeah.
Absolutely. That resonates. I mean, yes. I'm a parent. And what I find most challenging in regards to this conversation, and folks, I'd love to hear what you have to say too. When it comes to we the caregivers responding, or this is our value. This is how we want to respond. And everyone's got a different of how to respond. That's just my personal. What do we do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah. So, that happens. And I think that's going to be really normal and natural and to be expected. So that's not, atypical to have that. People have different ways that they want to respond. But at the end of the day, my suggestion is to choose, for better or for worse, which way you will respond, like which way you will go. And sometimes that means really looking at what is the outcome that we're trying to get. Like what is this really about? Sometimes we get stuck in who's right, who's wrong. Sometimes we get stuck in how were we parented, and really like just holding on to how we were parented, or like what is expected of us as parents from our own parents or from people around us, or what we read. But at the end of the day, what is the outcome for that kiddo? And what will adhere the best outcome? So if it means, giving up your way of thinking and trying, and you can try things out. You can say, how about we try this? And if it doesn't work, we'll correct course. Right. And so that's what I suggest, is sometimes looking over here and saying, instead of what's right, what would be, something that would get us to the best outcome that we're looking for with our child. And usually, Renia, it's to have a joyous kiddo who is able to trust in themselves and the people around them to be predictable and consistent, right? Because that creates a world around them that they can kind of rely on. And if we don't provide that world that kids can rely on, they become fearful, or they can become anxious. And that fear and anxiety, the way that it develops over childhood, is just like a timidness, or we can see a shyness, or a, inability to kind of like leave the parent's side without like feeling anxiety. Or, we start to see anxiety in perfectionism, or just kind of like needing to know how things are going to go. So the anxiety can look very different ways, but it's just that mechanism that starts to build. And we also start to become, almost unsure about our own selves, because kids are going to do things that we say they shouldn't do. And if we aren't comfortable with putting those consequences in order, kids are not going to know how far they can and can't go. They're going to think that they can go really, really far. And even though that looks like they like it, they don't. They actually love when there are boundaries.
This sounds like, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
This sounds like just having a solid accountability. That's what this is. Like, yes, it is. allows for us to hold them accountable, set them accountable, making sure that consistency allows for them to feel safe, less anxious, and that predictability. So to your point, and I love this share, which is what was your outcome?
Yeah.
Bottom line, what's your outcome? And and how that translates into work is that's actually the first question client when I meet them.
What is it? What's your outcome?
What's your goal? What are your breath?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what I do. The World Health Organization. It matters what you.
Right.
So whatever that is, I went there.
Right.
And frequently, what I'm hearing is, I want my child to get
breast milk. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's get into that. How you want to get breast milk?
Right.
Any which way you desire. Consistency is part of that. In order to get breast milk, stimulating and emptying the breast.
That's right.
So that's right. How this all ties into that.
I love it. What are some, I mean, I come across, Renia, so many, as I even say it, I also know how hard it is sometimes for people to be consistent, because we all have our own mechanisms. We all have our blind spots that keep us from doing the thing that we know would be good for our child, right? And I can only imagine the overwhelm that happens when you have a child and now there's this, this duty, this like want, desire to do this, and it doesn't always go perfectly. And so what's a tip that you have for people? And this could actually generalize. I mean, it doesn't just have to be, with lactation, but like, what's a tip that you have for people that aren't having the most seamless journey? And because they don't have the most seamless journey, it makes it that much harder to be consistent with the things that you're prescribing. So what's a tip that you have for them to really, move past that, to really, cut through some of that challenge?
There's a couple of things.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
Okay, so the first is education before you're holding a baby in your home is incredibly helpful. The studies prove it. What I've come across, like, okay, time to breastfeed. I don't know anything about it. I just know I have to do this.
Right.
But there is a choreography. And learning about that choreography before you're holding a baby in your hands is so number one, a little bit like basic fundamentals.
Right.
Number one. Number two, seek out support. And I know that actually the fifth talk of this series is all support. Right?
Yep.
What a lot of people realize is in getting education about also about the support available that happens at the other end when you're overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to be consistent. If you knew that the support existed for it, hold your handle on the tips.
I love it. I love that so much. It's so funny, right? Like going back to the basics, support and to educate yourself. And I think that that's really, really empowering. I love that. I love that so much. And do you have, and I'm so curious about this, do you have any anecdotal sort of clinical cases or a story where the consistency made a difference?
Oh, recently. January. So I was working with them who had to supplement the baby at the hospital. Because she medically was in not good shape to be after the delivery. We supplemented with formula. And mom recovered well and wanted to breastfeeding. Now, the issue was that the baby from a bottle and transitions. And so large part of my work with the family was keep breastfeeding. We got to keep breastfeeding. Every day, every feeding. Right here, we keep trying. Whether breastfeeding lasted 1 minute or 20 minutes. Every feeding to the breast. And so 2.5 weeks later, every day, and exclusively breastfeeding now.
Yay! I'm so excited for her.
Me too, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Back to our talk from last week. It's commitment.
Right.
That is
right.
Big.
Yeah. I love it.
What about you, Victoria?
Yeah, a couple comes to mind, a couple of stories come to mind, but I was just thinking about how, maybe a different twist on it, just how difficult sometimes it is to be consistent because of our own stuff. And like an example would be, consistency with boundaries and consistency with consequences. Like that whole discipline conversation can be so rough for a lot of parents because there's a lot of meaning making around what discipline looks like and what it should look like and what it does to a child and how it feels for the parent to actually discipline a child. A lot of parents find it to be like painstaking to have to do it because they don't want to disappoint or they don't want to have the child react. And so I'm thinking about a couple of parents actually where they have trouble being consistent. Like they know they're so resourced and like they know because they've read the books, they've had me, they've had every single kind of resource you can imagine, and they're not being resourceful. And then they feel shame about it. Like, why am I still not being consistent with what I know will be supportive for my child? And that's where I will always say the work comes in, like looking over here, like what is your blind spot that's creating this? And is it a story from your past? Is it you protecting one of your parents and how they parented you? Like what's going on? And then education, right? Like really educating them about like, well, developmentally speaking, this is for, this would benefit your child. So do what you want, right? Like what's your outcome? And what's the best way of getting there? This is what the data shows. This is what we know about development. And this is what we know from your own blind spots based on your history. How can we put it all together, integrate it? And so I have a lot of stories like that, and it's hard to just pick one, but where once we get to that understanding of self, it becomes a little bit more, it becomes a little bit, there's an I don't want to say easier, but there's an ease to trying something new. And I would say just being compassionate and gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. Taking one feeding at a time in my and for you too, like taking one moment and saying, hey, like I implemented this in this particular situation. I got the outcome I wanted, or I didn't get the outcome I wanted. Let's like you said, deeper look. What contributed to that?
Right.
So the next time I might tweak. For a different outcome.
I love that, Renia, because it's really taking the personalization out of it. It's kind of like, all right, well, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And what can I do to tweak it? Rather than a lot of shame and guilt associated with it. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
One situation at a time. One.
Yeah. I want to ask, Renia, both of us are offering our time to people that are watching or watching the replay. If they, if they share that they watch these 5 top things talks. I know I'm offering a session complimentary. It actually only happens when people sign on with me for a 3 or 6 month term, but I'm offering it here for anyone that is watching us now. And what about you, Renia? What are you offering?
Yes, so I'm offering complimentary session, education or support for lactation, breastfeeding, talk about 30 minutes of a consultation with me by the Friday after. For this particular week, it would be this upcoming Friday. If you approach me by Friday, 30-minute complimentary. That you've joined us for.
I love it. I would jump on that. Amazing. So to kind of wrap this up, I wonder what is something that we can offer to people about consistency inside of their day. Like, how can we, as just humans, work on being more consistent, just so we can build that muscle?
Yeah, Victoria, I think it's really just like about before, in regards to that accent.
Yeah,
I will tell you. Personally works for me.
Is what?
Is a morning routine.
Oh, that's right.
Morning, we'll have coffee by me for 15 minutes. Or I will 10 minutes to just do 10 minutes breathing and meditation. Consistent with yourself. And then applying that frequency into your breastfeeding, whatever it translates into department of life. That's what I have to offer.
Yeah, really, really great advice. I like that. And I do agree that it's so hard when you have something like parenting comes up or breastfeeding and you're like, okay, now I have to be consistent. I've never been consistent before, right? So to try to, just like you said, place that into your day somehow. Like for me, my stake in the ground is to have a consistent, practice every morning where I have a couple of rituals that I do. And I think that, like you said, builds that muscle. And then when you get to those big monumental moments in your life where consistency is uber, uber important, it won't feel as much of a, climbing Kilimanjaro kind of moment. I love it. Yeah. This was such a great talk and really actually filled me up and reminded me of how important it is to be consistent. Yeah. What are you left with, Renia?
I'm left with the outcome piece. Resonating with me. Let's think about what we want our outcomes and being gentle getting there. Yeah.
I love that. Let's be aware of what our outcomes are and being gentle getting there. Oh, it's great. I love it. Well, that concludes this talk. I think it was great. If you're watching the replay and you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the chat box below, or you can get in touch with us. Our websites are right there on the screen. And yeah, we'll see you next week for another amazing conversation. And that will be our talk number 4. And it's going to be on being flexible and adjusting your approach. So the importance of flexibility and being able to course correct when you need to. All right. I guess we'll see everyone next week.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, Renia. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.